Today I'm reviewing the BGVP NS10 Pro 10 driver in-ear monitors. What do they sound like? Let's get it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews, and there they are. That is the BGVP NS10 Pro. Inside, 10 drivers per side. We've got dual dynamics and 8 balanced armatures. That's a pretty crazy driver count. Remember, in the world of IEMs, more drivers does not always mean better, but in this case it might. Stick around to find out. The advantages of having so many drivers is better frequency division, so you can get the full spectrum and have excellent instrument separation and resolution. The downsides of multiple driver IEMs is that they have to work cohesively. They need to sound like a unified whole rather than little bits strapped onto each other. But anyway, the NS10 Pro is coming in at a price of $199 US. Now, as you can see, the shells are pretty minimalist in design. They have this nice matte finish. They feel really well built. This is typical BGVP craftsmanship. I get a really good secure fit with these. They fit in my ears so snugly and do a great job of passive noise isolation. This sort of, not sharp edge, but this straight edge there, that does get a little bit of give me a little bit of a hot spot after a couple of hours, sometimes, not every time, but if that happens, I just have to slightly readjust them and I'm good to continue. Now, these IEMs do come with 3 sets of tuning filters. I'm not going to take it out, I'll just leave it in there. So you've got a silver one, a gold one, a red one. Basically, they all sound the same. It's like happens so often with these tuning nozzles. So they're more of a marketing thing than actual distinct sound profiles. So I'm going to be describing the silver, which is the default filter. So with that said, let's get into it. These are really easy to drive. You don't need a special powerful amplifier or source. Just plug them into any dongle DAC or even maybe a smartphone. But right, let's talk about how they sound. So basically, these have I would say a very balanced and very cohesive sound signature. It's a kind of a neutral, bright sound. There's no one frequency drawing all the attention, and that evenness across the bass, mid-range and treble, backed up by excellent clarity, is actually the greatest strength, in my opinion, of the NS10. It's just a great tonal balance. But anyway, let's have a look at the graph. There you can see it. So the bass is pretty much neutral. It's really, it might be slightly north of completely neutral. It's not a really colorful or bombastic sound. It's definitely not a bass head IEM. However, the sub bass extension is pretty good. But the good thing about this bass, remember we've got 2 dynamic drivers crafting the bass here, but the good thing about the bass here is that it's clean, it's very fast, and it's very disciplined. So there's no bleeding into the mid-range. It's got a taut, punchy texture. It always knows its place. It doesn't overstep its boundaries, and it basically stays out of the way and lets the mids and the details come through. And then for the mid-range basically is the beneficiary of that disciplined bass. So the mid-range comes across as really clean, transparent, very naturally positioned. Vocals are nice and articulate. They have excellent clarity and they sit exactly where they should be without any forced warmth or any, necessary recession. And it might look a little bit on the graph like the core mid-range is slightly recessed, and it's not really, and that is because the quantity of the bass is fairly reserved, so those mids don't need to be really up front and forward to be heard. So the mid-range is totally free from congestion. All those multiple drivers work together in harmony to create a really nice open mid-range. Sounds very effortless. The way it handles complex layering in the mids is really good, and I'd say it's a very honest presentation of that core mid-range. If there is a lean anywhere, it's towards the high frequencies, which are slightly bright, but in the best way kind of thing. It's not an aggressive treble, but it is energetic. I'd say it's finely tuned, and it provides heaps of, a nice sense of air, lots of clarity. Notes are really crisp and well extended. It gives percussion and subtle details a nice sparkle and a nice snap. So snappy, fast transients and nice sharp attacks without ever crossing the line into sibilance or harshness, unless you are listening to a particularly poor recording, in which case they don't mask that, but they're not inherently sibilant. And basically the treble gives the whole sound a nice vibrant energy. Now let's talk soundstage and technicalities. Look, technically the NS10 Pro is much better than I expected it to be. The soundstage is nice and wide, it's open, yet at the same time it manages to feel fairly intimate, like vocals are reasonably close to you. It doesn't sound like you're, watching from afar. I guess the correct term would be listening from afar. But, the excellent space in the stage is backed up by really precise imaging. The instrument separation and the overall clarity are both great, and they both complement that nice balanced tonality, and that allows for really excellent detail retrieval and a very revealing sort of sound. But perhaps most importantly, it's a very cohesive, finely tuned and dynamic set. So all those 10 drivers work very harmoniously together. You would never imagine that there are 10 separate drivers within there. It just sounds like one natural organic sound source. If that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but it makes perfect sense in my mind, which is probably the most important. No, I'm just kidding, but let's get on to a couple of comparisons. I'm going to start with the SimGot EA1000 Fermat. Now the Fermat here comes in slightly more expensive at $219, or at least that was the price when I reviewed them. This is just a single dynamic driver IEM, if I remember correctly. So comparing the sound of these two, both of them lean slightly towards a brighter tuning. However, the EA1000 has a little extra fullness in the lower mid-range, but that is coupled with some extra lift in the upper mids. And what that does, it just means that the EA1000 pushes vocals a little more forward in the mix, though that extra lift in the upper mid-range can be a little bit more aggressive when you sort of turn up the volume and listen a bit louder. Both of these have fantastic treble extension, both have excellent detail retrieval. I would say, however, when it comes to just raw resolution, the EA1000 isn't quite on par with the NS10 Pro. I would say the NS10 Pro's resolution, instrument separation, and layering are slightly ahead. But they are both fantastic IEMs. The EA1000 probably slightly more comfortable for me, although I hate polished shells because they're just fingerprint and scratch magnets, but don't let that deter you if you are interested in the EA1000. It's still a really good IEM. And next up, we've got the Kefine Quasio. I'm still not sure if I'm saying that right, but the Quasio is a quad driver IEM. It's got 2 dynamic drivers and 2 balanced armatures. It is quite a bit cheaper than the NS10 Pro. The Quasio, I think it's like $129. Don't quote me on that, but if I'm way off, you can let me know in the comments below. But in terms of sound signature, the Quasio has a more vibrant and colorful presentation, and that's due to its enhanced bass and lower mid-range, and that gives it some extra fullness, a bit of extra body, and a sort of a warmer, more inviting tonality. And despite having fewer drivers, the Quasio performs really, really well in terms of technical performance, but the extra fullness in the Quasio sound means that the mids aren't quite as spacious and transparent as they are on the NS10 Pro. Again, these are both great IEMs. The Quasio's lower price is obviously very compelling if you're on a budget. but the NS Pro is going to appeal more to people looking for something that is closer to neutral, because like I said, the Quasio is a bit more crafted in its sound. It's a bit more colored. But if I had to choose a daily driver, I would go with Quasio. Personally, I like a bit of warmth and body in my music, you know, for a daily driver, that is. But if I'm doing critical listening, which I rarely do, I listen to music for enjoyment and engagement. And for me, a slightly warmer, fuller presentation usually gets my attention a bit more. That doesn't mean I don't like the NS10 Pro. I think it's a fantastic IEM, and I definitely think that it is on par with anything else around that $200 mark. And I should have mentioned, there are a couple of things I forgot completely to mention. First of all, these have MMCX connectors, and that is pretty rare nowadays. And for a long time, I quite hated MMCX connectors because there used to be a lot of really dodgy ones in Chi-Fi, but BGVP, these ones are really good. They click in nice and securely. They spin around like that, which is something 2-pin connectors don't do, and they're pretty easy to insert and remove without an MMCX tool. They're not really tight, and it doesn't feel like you're breaking something every time you remove the cable. But there's not really any reason you would want to remove this cable unless you don't like brown, because it's a really nice cable. It handles beautifully. It's high quality silver plated copper, and it is modular, so you can easily swap out between the 4.4mm balance termination, which I have here, and the included 3.5mm one. So that is a great cable to complement these IEMs. It comes with a pretty nice carrying case too, so the accessories are pretty solid. Anyway, I'll leave the rest up to you. It's time for me to wrap it up. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Par Family Audiophile Style. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button before you go. And until next time, I'll see you later.